All right, everyone, welcome. We're going to give people, or I'm going to give people a couple minutes to join, and then I'll start a little bit after 6 o'clock. Um, Please make sure you're muted. The format of this is going to be about 30 minutes of presentation, and then there's about time for 15 minutes of questions at the end of the presentation. So we should be done around 6:45. If you have any other questions, you can message me directly as well, and that information is in the chat. All right, once again, just waiting for a couple more people to join. It's just 6 o'clock now, so I'm going to give people about 3 minutes or so, and then I'll go ahead and get started. I do want to just start off by making sure that everyone can see the presentation. It should say high altitude investments at the top. So if you can see and hear me, just can you drop like a yes in the chat real quick, someone? That would be great. Okay, perfect. Um, Once again, the way that this presentation works is it'll be about 30 minutes. I do ask everyone to mute themselves during the presentation. And then at the end, I'll have about 15 minutes for questions. Also, if you want to ask me a question directly, my email and my phone number are in the chat as well. So you can always reach out directly if you don't feel comfortable sharing a question in front of the group, and we should be done around 6:45-ish. And I'll start here in about 3 minutes or so. All right. It's almost 6:04. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Once again, if you have not muted yourself, please mute yourself, and we'll have time for questions at the end of the presentation. So to go ahead and start, my name is Megan. I'm a realtor at Good Neighbor Realty here in Denver, Colorado. I grew up in Southwest Colorado and have lived all over the state. And I've been a realtor and real estate investor for about 7 years now. In today's presentation, the format is going to be, I will go through the presentation. I'm going to talk about some different things about ski towns, mainly regulations, kind of price and entry points for different markets, lifestyle investments, kind of what to expect revenue and cash flow wise in these markets, what drives revenues, pros and cons, and why I work with Good Neighbor Realty, which is the brokerage that I work with. And we pretty much specialize in short-term rentals here in the state of Colorado. So I'm going to start off the bat with all the areas that you can legally, and emphasis on legally, buy a short-term rental in the state of Colorado. So unfortunately, regulations are probably the hardest part of investing in a mountain market in Colorado. All over the state, regulations are different. So it's not like everything is the same at a statewide level. You have different things based on whether you're in a city or a county and the municipality going on there. So part of the issue when you're navigating buying a short-term rental in a ski town market is knowing where you can legally invest. Because the way that these markets are and the regulations are, you could literally be standing in the middle of the street, and on the right side of the street, you could legally own a short-term rental, and on the left side of the street, you might not be able to. So when you're looking for a short-term rental, it's really important that you have somebody who knows the regulations in these areas, because you really don't want to end up with a property that you buy with the intention of renting it out and then not being able to do that. So these are the areas, and there will be some in addition to some of these where you can still legally buy, but these are the main ones in the ski towns that I see across the state that people are interested in investing in. So starting off strong, I'm going to start off with Summit County, which I feel like most people are familiar with, whether you're in Colorado or not, because Breckenridge is there, and Breckenridge is one of the most popular ski towns in the state. So you can invest in Breckenridge. You can also invest in a town called Blue River, which is just outside of Breckenridge and actually has Breckenridge addresses. And also Dillon, Silverthorne, and then not pictured is also the town of Keystone. Keystone recently incorporated this last year, became their own municipality, and they allow short-term rental as well. Following that is the Roaring Fork Valley, which is the valley that stretches from Glenwood all the way down to, Glenwood Springs all the way down to Aspen. And in that valley, there are lots of little towns, and most of them are short-term rental friendly. So you can invest in Glenwood Springs. I don't have that listed on this presentation because it's not technically like close enough to be a ski town, but Glenwood Springs allows short-term rental. Aspen allows short-term rental. The town of Basalt, Carbondale, and Snowmass also allow short-term rental. And then there are some unincorporated areas that allow short-term rental in between Glenwood Springs and Aspen as well. So continuing on, are Grand and Round County, where Winter Park is, Fraser, which is just outside of Winter Park, and also Steamboat Springs. All of these towns allow short-term rental in some capacity. And then also just outside of Fraser is Granby and Grand Lake, which are a little further outside of Winter Park, but they do allow short-term rentals as well. And also Eagle County. So Avon and Vale and Beaver Creek, they allow short-term rental too. All right, so now getting kind of more into nitty-gritty of price points. So I don't think it's a secret, and most people know ski towns are not cheap. They're expensive. However, depending on how you want to invest or what exactly you're looking for, you might be able to find something that is not a single family home in a lower price point. So these are the entry-level price points for these different markets for condos and townhomes. So if your budget is, 400 to 800K, that could open up a few different markets for you. Those markets would be Winter Park, Fraser, Keystone, Dillon, and Silverthorne, possibly Breckenridge as well. There are some condos occasionally that come up in the resort zone that are around this price point. They're like one bedroom or a studio. So that would be the towns that you were looking at. Now, if you have a little bit higher of a budget, say $600K to $1 million, that can open up some different areas as well. So at that price point, you would be able to look at condos and townhomes in Avon, Vale, Beaver Creek, Breckenridge, Blue River, Carbondale, Basalt, Steamboat. Those are all those areas. And if you have an even higher budget of $1 million plus, that'll open up Aspen and Snowmass for you in terms of the townhome and condo market. Now, single family homes are expensive in the mountains. It's not a surprise. So most single family homes in the mountains are going to be $1 million or more. Sometimes you do find outliers that are less than that. A lot of the times they will need work. So that is something to consider. If that's something that you're willing to deal with, you might be able to purchase something for less than $1 million. However, most of these places, your bottom of, the price point, entry point is going to be $1 million. So from 900K to 1.5 in that price point, you would be able to find a single family home in Dillon, Silverthorne, Carbondale, Fraser, and maybe Blue River. Sometimes you can find things in Blue River. From $1 million to $3 million, you'd be able to look at Basalt, Winter Park, definitely Blue River for sure, Steamboat, and Breckenridge. And then from $3 million up, you're looking at Vale, Beaver Creek, Avon, Aspen, and Snowmass. And also in the $1 to $3 million price point, that is where Keystone, the houses in Keystone would land as well. So there are different options for different budgets. And I have seen some things come up that I thought were cheaper than they should be in the last year, if I'm being completely honest. All right. So if you have a smaller budget than that, or you really want a single family home, but you're just not willing to stomach that $1 million price point, there are some options. And what they are is what I would call like a ski town adjacent area. So it's not going to be a house right in a ski town where you can drive a couple of minutes and be at the ski resort, right? But you might be in a town where you drive 15 to 30 minutes outside of that area. And you could buy a house, a single family home for under $1 million and do well as a short-term rental and still have that proximity and be able to use that and enjoy that. And I do have lots of clients that end up going this route because it gives them the ability to, use these properties a couple times a year with their family, go skiing, and then not have to pay that huge price tag of $1 million plus for houses in those areas. So some of these areas that come to mind as ski town adjacent towns, one of them is Alma, that's just over Hoosier Pass from Breckenridge. And then if you go a little further south, then you get to Fairplay. So those are close to Breckenridge. Granby and Grand Lake are about 15 to 30 minutes outside of Winter Park. And then unincorporated Boulder County is close to Nederland, where Eldora Ski Resort is. And you can find houses kind of in that area about 15 to 20 minutes away from the ski resort as well. Alrighty. So what drives revenue in a ski town? The thing that's interesting about ski town markets is they are a traditional vacation rental market, right? So there's always going to be demand in these markets for people going there, and there is a limited number of inventory. So in theory, you should be able to get revenue pretty easily. However, because they are traditional vacation rental markets, there is a lot of competition in these areas. So if you are planning to invest in one of these areas and you're really trying to optimize for cash flow and make as much money as you can, then you really have to optimize your property to the type of guests that you have and have amenities and do things that are different than other people. I could pull, one out of five listings in any of these markets, and I'm going to see the same thing over and over again. I'm going to see a lot of 2 bedrooms, 1 to 2 bath condos that are really outdated and have really outdated furniture, and all look really similar. And so, that's something that you don't want to do because that's not going to drive revenue for you. And in order to come into this market and absolutely crush it and be at the top of the market and make a lot of money, which I think is everyone's goal if you're going to buy a vacation rental, you have to stand out. So one of the things that's really essential is having really good design. So this is a place in Winter Park. It was designed by one of the designers that I work with. It's a very nice house. The design is modern, it's clean, it's not dated, and it looks good. The pictures are good. It drives people to book. So your design and your photography are really important, almost maybe one of the most important factors in your property being successful. The other thing to that is your proximity to the resort in town or the kind of experience that you have to offer guests. So if you have a property that is within walking distance to a lift or a gondola, you can charge a higher premium than somebody who doesn't, right? Or say if you're on a bus stop that people don't have to walk very far to get to that bus stop and then it's free and it takes them right to the resort, that's also a plus. So your proximity is going to be important as well. Now, that being said, if you have a property that's kind of more in a rural area, but you offer a more kind of cozy stay where people are going to want to stay in the house more, there's things that they would like about that property, even though it's more rural, you can drive revenue that way too. Building on that is your amenities. So pretty much in a ski town, you have to have a hot tub because that's an amenity that all hotels have there. And a lot of people are looking for that when they're going on a vacation. You can have other amenities as well. We have a client in Keystone that has a pickleball court and an indoor pool, and they can charge insane rates because not a lot of other houses have that in that area, right? So those things are going to be directly related to the amount that you can charge on a nightly basis and what your revenue is going to be like year over year. Also, the size of the property. Like I said, if I pulled 1 out of 5 listings in a ski town, I'm going to see a lot of 2 bedroom, 1 to 2 bath condos that sleep 4 to 6 people. So if you can get a large house where you can sleep 16 plus people, you have a completely different product that you're giving people. You can charge a lot higher rates. You can make a lot more money. So the size of your property also plays a big determining factor in the amount of revenue that you can make. And building on that are mountain views. When people come to vacation to Colorado, they think about mountains, they think about mountain views. If you have a view of a ski resort, if you have really pretty views, those you can also charge a premium for with your property. As well as your outdoor spaces and just unique properties and unique offerings. So people like the outdoors in Colorado. If they're coming for the summer or off season where it's warmer outside, you want to have nice outdoor spaces for them to hang out in. It also photographs really well and it just looks appealing on a listing. The other thing is, does your property have something that nobody else can offer, right? So if you have something like that that's unique, you're going to stand out. You're going to get booked above your competition. Oops. All right, so some pros and cons in these markets. So the pros is that these markets have really strong appreciation. Like year over year, Colorado has pretty strong appreciation for home prices in general. But these markets, if you look at the statistics, have really strong appreciation, like the highest in the state. There's also lots of demand here because they are traditional vacation rental markets. And people know where Vail is. People know where Aspen is. People know where Breckenridge is. So there's always, demand to these places. It's also a really good lifestyle investment. If you live out of state and you want a property that you can come stay in and use a couple times a year, it's a great property for that. It's also really easy to find existing short-term rentals because there are so many in this market. It can be an easier way to find existing properties that maybe you don't have to do as much work to set up as a short-term rental. And there is good resale demand because there is limited inventory in these markets. That means that there's not a ton of houses for sale, and typically the markets here are pretty good and there is good resale demand. Also, because of the price point of these properties, there are really good tax reduction opportunities, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. And because of the clientele that come to these towns, they tend to be more downturn resilient, because if you're coming to a ski town for a vacation, if you're going to Breckenridge or Vail or Aspen, typically you have more money. Even if things aren't going great in the economy, you probably still have that money to be able to travel. Now, the cons. These places are expensive. I don't think that's a secret. And hold on one moment. It's not a secret that these places are expensive, and it costs a pretty penny to enter in these markets and own a rental here. Because they are traditional vacation rental markets, they're competitive. So you have to make sure that you are putting all the bells and whistles on your property in order to make money. Also, there is really high seasonal demand. So in the winter and in the summer, you're going to have a lot of demand. In mud season, which is what we call like April and May and October, November here in Colorado, you're not going to have much going on because most people are not going there. The seasonal workers leave for those months. Like nobody's hanging out in those towns. So that's just something to consider. Also, because of these places and the way that the regulations are hard to navigate. And it also can be harder to cash flow in these markets unless you're at a really high price point and you're offering a very nice luxury stay. So these are all things to keep in mind if you want to invest in this market. All right. So some things to be aware of, and I've kind of touched on some of this earlier, but each town and municipality is very unique and they have different regulations and different stipulations. So some of those things might be like some of these places require you to have a registered agent. So what that is somebody who lives within 60 miles of the property and can be called like 24/7 if there's some sort of emergency. Now, you might hear that and think, oh, well, like, how do I find this person? Well, if you have a property manager, it could be a property manager. If you have like a cleaner or a handyman, it could be that person. There's ways to make this work, but that's like a stipulation that you might see in some of these towns. Also, some of these towns have different zones. So you might like a house in one area of Breckenridge and see that it's cheap for Breckenridge and be like, oh, why is this house $1.25 million? This would be a great short-term rental. And then you realize the reason why is because it's in an area that has no licenses left and you cannot legally short-term rent in that area. And then the other thing is different occupancy regulations. So you might find a 5 or 6 bedroom house and be like, oh, well, this is great. I'm going to put 25 people in here, but the municipality is not going to allow you to do that. So all of these places have different regulations with different stipulations, and knowing them is very important to knowing, one, if you can buy a rental in that area, two, what you can expect in terms of the regulations that you have to adhere to, and three, that's going to help shape how much money you can make, because if you can only have so many people or you can only rent so many nights, those things are going to be limiting factors in your revenue. The other thing is there are a lot of unfriendly HOAs to short-term rentals in these areas. Some are very friendly and they understand that, a lot of people own these homes as second homes or vacation rentals, but some of them do not want short-term rentals in their communities and they do not allow them. So that's, something to keep in mind. The other thing is this is a different clientele, especially once you get into the higher price points. They have different expectations, and you might have to adapt your property or some of the offerings that you have for this property in order to meet their expectations. Also, in rural areas, you have to get creative sometimes. And what I mean by that is rural properties sometimes have weird quirks that you might not experience if you had a city property in like a major metropolitan area, and that can take some adjustment for some people. And I don't necessarily mean that in like a negative way, but you just have to be aware of those things, right? Like there's wildlife, you have to adapt for that. Sometimes weird things happen, like where there's power outages and stuff, and like this happens in Blue River sometimes, where they have power outages for half a day because of the power grid system out there. So, there's just things to be aware of when you buy a rural property. All right, so looking at ski town investments as a lifestyle investment. So ski towns make a really good lifestyle investment, and finding a property that breaks even can be a great way to cover your cost of personal use. And also these towns, some of the strongest tax benefits that you can get can be from properties in these areas because of the price points of them. So there's a thing with rental properties and short-term rentals specifically, where you can do what's called a cost segregation study and use that to get bonus depreciation. And you can only do it with short-term rentals. And it's based off of the purchase price of the property. So the higher price property you buy, the bigger tax benefit you get. I'm not going to go a lot into depth about that because that could be a whole different presentation. If you have questions about that, you can shoot me an email or text. And then on the next slide, I actually have a QR code that links to a podcast about how that works if you're interested in that. But, I have clients buying in these areas specifically because it's going to save them a lot of money on taxes, and it's great for that. And then also, with these markets, the appreciation is really strong, and the cash flow it depends on the property, but sometimes, these properties will cover themselves, and sometimes they'll make a lot of money, but it just kind of depends on the price point that you're at. But I do have clients that are buying simply for the fact that they know the appreciation is really strong in these markets. So they know, hey, if I buy this property, it might not make me a ton of money in the next 5-10 years. It'll probably cover itself, but I'll get to use it. And I'm going to get an insane amount of appreciation when I go to sell in the next 5 to 10 years. I'm going to make my money that way. All right, so this is a slide I was talking about if you want to learn how to reduce your taxable income using short-term rental and bonus depreciation. You can scan this QR code right here, and it'll take you to a podcast that we've done on that. All right, so now I'm going to get more into kind of management of a short-term rental and what that looks like. So I have plenty of out-of-state clients that buy properties in these markets, and a lot of the times their first question to me is, hey, can I do this from out of state? Do I have to have a property manager? Like, what does that look like? And the answer to that is yes, you can manage a short-term rental from out of state, and it's all about building a team. So if you get a property manager, you can do that. Great. You're going to pay them 20 to 30%, depending on who it is. If you don't want to pay somebody that, you can build your own team. And part of what I do with my clients is I have people to give to my clients so that they can build that team easier. And basically, you just need boots on the ground, and you can do a lot of things through automation and AI on the remote end. So you're going to need a cleaner, a handyman, a landscaper, and ski towns, you're definitely going to need snow removal person. And the great thing is that you can automate most of this. So now in the great year of 2025, almost 2026, there's a lot of tools to help short-term rental owners manage things remotely and also automatically. So there's dynamic pricing, which uses AI to set your prices. There's automated messaging so that you can send that to all of your guests. And so you're not having to manually message them things. There's software that notifies your cleaners of when there's check-ins and check-outs, when the property needs to be cleaned, lets you pay them. And then also for them to look and restock your supplies, you can order supplies on Amazon or online, have them delivered to your property. And, all this can be done from 1 mile or 1,000 miles away. Now, there are some things that you will have to do manually, right? So like creating your listing on Airbnb and VRBO, answering one-off guest questions, although some of these management softwares now have AI that will respond to your guest questions as well, and coordinating contractors when repairs and maintenance are needed, or, one-off things that happen occasionally. But you could also outsource any of these things. All right, so this is an example of a client that we have in Blue River. They bought this house in 2023 for 2.5. They spent about $90,000 for design, furniture, the install of that furniture, and photos. And we projected their annual revenue for the first year about $300K, and they actually made about $250K in their first year. Then after that, they added 2 additional bedrooms and upped their capacity. So now they are hitting close to that $300K mark. All right, so now I'm going to go into a little bit about what I do here at Good Neighbor and the resources that we offer our clients. So how I work at Good Neighbor is I wear several hats. So that's I know a lot of things about short-term rentals and regulations and running a short-term rental and being successful in that. And I'm also a realtor. So the first thing that I kind of do with my clients is a goal discovery. So we find out what kind of price point you're looking for, the legislation, can you even buy a short-term rental in the area that you're interested in, how you're going to use that property, the revenue potential, your lending options, all of that. Once we get that going, then we start to do property analyses. So we look at different properties and I put together performance to tell you what I think the revenue is going to be on them and how much it's going to cost to renovate them and design them and furnish them and all these things. We'll talk about your strategies, financing options, and then we'll start to secure property for you. So that is tour properties. Once you go under contract, go through the whole real estate process until you close. And then once you close, I don't disappear. I help you launch and be a successful short-term rental host. So the things that we have to help all of our clients be short-term rental hosts and be successful at it is we do have a whole short-term rental course that all of our clients get for free. We have designers, contractors, property managers, people to install furniture, pretty much anything that you would need, cleaners, to run a successful short-term rental, that we can connect you with these people, and they will help you in terms of renovating your property if you need to, designing your property if you need to. I have great photographers helping you get your listing up, your automation tools, all these different things, and then helping you dial in prices and then launch and get your bookings and then check in with you every couple months and see how things are going. So just building on that, these are kind of all the resources that we have for all of our clients. So we have events, online events like this, and then also in-person events across the state of Colorado that we invite all of our clients to. We have the course, we do investment property underwriting on every single property. We have a podcast, we have AirDNA access for our clients, which is a tool that looks at pretty much every short-term rental in the country and can tell you the revenue in these different markets and all these fun analytics. And then short-term rental specific contractors that we can provide you with. And if for some reason you are interested in short-term rentals, but you don't want to buy one in the state of Colorado, but you want to learn how to be a short-term rental host, we do also offer our course for sale. This QR code will take you to the course if you're interested in learning how to do that. And yeah, lastly, this is my contact information. I'm done with my presentation. It's 6:31, so I was exactly just at 30 minutes like I said I would be. And now I'll open it up for questions. If additionally, like I said, if you have a question but you don't want to share that in front of other people, feel free to text or email me directly. And you can either type questions in the chat or unmute yourself and ask one. Feel free either way. I did see some. What are the current, okay, so I have a question. What are the current interest rates for vacation homes? And the answer to that is it's dependent on your credit and how much you put down. I think interest rates are sitting generally around 6.25%, 6.5% right now. Investment and second homes tend to track a little bit higher, but I did just have a client close a week ago, and I think she got like a 5.5 on an investment home. But it does kind of depend on your own personal situation, your credit, how much money you're putting down, what type of loan type you're using. Do any of the mountain town areas require the residents to be a primary? Yes and no. So all of the areas that I talked about in this presentation will allow you to short-term rent without it being a primary residence. However, some of them do have primary residence requirements, but all the ones that I mentioned will allow you to rent without being a primary residence. Next question. Thoughts on buying a property that will have a big attraction in the future, i.e. Winter Olympics? I think that's a great idea if it's going to be a recurring attraction. So now that Sundance Film Festival is in Boulder, I really like unincorporated Boulder County for luxury STRs, because I know every year during Sundance, people are going to be coming and they're going to be staying there. If it was a one-off, like somewhere's going to host the Winter Olympics one time, I'm less confident about that, unless it's just a good market to begin with. Next question is, are you seeing properties on the market longer in these mountain areas with price reductions? Yes and no. The market in Colorado is in a really interesting place right now. And we're seeing what I've been seeing, and kind of like the general sentiment that I get from people is if something is in good condition and it's turnkey and it's priced right, like not too high, it's selling generally pretty quickly, less than 30 days on market. If something needs a lot of work, or it's overpriced, or there's something weird about the property, then it is sitting on the market longer and has price reductions. And I have been able to get clients good deals in some of these mountain towns with properties that have been on the market a little bit longer, but it's kind of a weird point right now. Next question. How do you measure which areas that you listed are more saturated with active STRs and other? You can look in, like, for analytics for that, you can look at AirDNA and they can tell you the total amount of STRs in each market and the other analytics that go behind that. And then the other question is, and how are bonus depreciation rules changing from 2025 to 2026? From my knowledge, I don't think so. Typically, the way bonus depreciation was done before is it was like 100% one year, then 80% the next year, then 60% is going down each year. As of right now, you can still get 100% bonus depreciation in 2026 as well. That could always change, but as of right now, I believe bonus depreciation is staying the same from 2025 to 2026. Are there any other questions? Okay. Are there any specific area or towns near the ski resorts that have new build STRs? Yes. There's a project in Winter Park that comes to mind on, oh, I can't remember the name of it, but it's on Ramble Way. That's one that comes to mind that has new build STRs. There are some areas that do. There's some newer stuff that's been built out in Blue River as well. And that is what comes to mind. But yes, there are new build STRs out there. Question. How big of a challenge would a property in Fairplay be versus Blue River? It depends. Fairplay, because of the size of the town, actually has a decent amount of people that you can hire as contractors. I don't really think it's going to be that much different managing in Fairplay versus Blue River. You will get people who like work out of Breckenridge who will drive to Fairplay and vice versa. So it's not too hard out there. Another question, advantage to allowing dogs. Everyone in Colorado loves dogs. Everyone in Colorado has a dog. And I am very bullish on pet-friendly properties. I think it's a great way to increase your revenue and appeal to more guests. This next question is, would I recommend other programs for pre-buy or operating an STR, AirDNA, pricing, linking Airbnb, VRBOs, others? Yes. So that's part of what we give our clients. We give our clients access to AirDNA once they start working with us. I also, believe in using automation tools. So I use Hospitable for my managing, which basically, like if I get a booking on VRBO, it'll block my calendar on Airbnb so that I can't get double booked. And then also helps manage like rule sets and automated messaging. And then also Price Labs, which is automated pricing software. Those are all tools in your toolbox that I think you should be using. Why make your life harder than it needs to be? How friendly are regulations in further out ski towns like Crested Butte and Telluride? The resort of Crested Butte is friendly. The town of Crested Butte is not. Telluride has very strict anti-short-term rental regulations. There are some places in those areas. Purgatory, just north of Durango and in between Durango and Silverton, allows STR. Ouray allows STR. There's some, pockets in these areas that do. Telluride, unfortunately, is out. Okay, any other questions? All right, unless I have, I'm gonna give it like 30 more seconds for additional questions. Um, do I currently have any pre-furnished STRs that are for sale currently? Yes. Charles, if you want to shoot me a text or an email, I will send those to you. And then the other question says, besides unincorporated Boulder, what other areas of Boulder would you consider? The answer is none, because the incorporated town of Boulder does not allow you to operate an STR unless it's your primary residence. So I would not recommend buying one there because you would be running it illegally. But unincorporated Boulder is great. It's very beautiful in that area, and you can still be pretty close to town depending on where you are. Any other questions? All right, how important is a garage as an amenity? Not very important, actually. If you have a very high-end property, maybe. I would say I see a lot of short-term rentals, and I've seen plenty of short-term rentals that are successful in rural areas and areas where it snows and they don't have a garage. What ski areas are near unincorporated Boulder? Eldora in Netherlands. What areas on the Front Range would I consider as mountain commuting STR areas? Can you clarify what exactly you mean by that? Do you just mean mountain, like rural mountain markets? So in Colorado, we have two main mountain markets. We have your ski town markets, and then we have what is a rural mountain market. So that's a mountain area that is not in like a town really, but people are going there because they want to get away for the weekend. They want to have time with their family. They want to hike. They might ski, or they just want to have kind of like a cabin in the woods vibes. So if that's the type of mountain market you're talking about, some of those areas would be like unincorporated Boulder County, Blackhawk, unincorporated Jefferson County. So like that would be like Evergreen, Pine, also unincorporated Park County, Bailey, Jefferson is another. Okay, folks driving up from Denver Metro Day for day skiing. Yeah. So all these places could be that. Another one would be kind of down further south, but like Woodland Parks, another area like that too. Okay, we have about a minute and a half left for questions. If you have any final questions, please ask them. Daniel asked, what are the price points for the new builds, STR and Winter Park? They're, I think about two, I think the entry level ones are about 1.9 to 2 million, and they are single family homes. I think they're 4 bedrooms. They have garages, they have rooftops, views of the mountain, and they are also right next to that new gondola that's going to be built in Winter Park. Um, What's the owner's liability for wild animal incidents, and have I seen any such incidents? So most of the counties will have you post something in your rental about wild animal incidents. And so they'll have you post like a set of rules, and then you need to make sure guests follow them. So one of them is like, do not leave trash cans or trash outside or any sort of food outside. That's a big one. And in terms of your liability, I would always encourage you to have an insurance policy with like an STR rider, and maybe like $1 million or so in liability insurance for crazy things. I have not heard of anyone ever being attacked by wildlife and then trying to sue an STR owner, unless there was maybe like, I haven't heard, I don't think in my knowledge that's happened. I could see the only way maybe you getting in trouble for that is like really gross negligence and not doing what you're supposed to do. But, wildlife is out there. If you're in a mountain area and you're outside, sometimes you encounter them. Um, Charles, can I elaborate on the price ranges with the appreciation opportunity? text me about that and we can talk about that separately. Which of these ski town markets are in the best positions for price appreciation or at the largest risks of reductions? So I'm going to tell you the number one town for appreciation is going to be Aspen. At this point in time, to be able to buy a property in Aspen, you have to have a lot of money. And when a property goes $10 million plus, the people who have that type of money who are buying those properties are not going to be losing that money anytime soon. So the appreciation in Aspen has been astronomical, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. The largest risk of price reductions, I would have to look at further data on that, but I don't have a clear answer for you on that right now because I just don't have that data in front of me. Okay, so it is now hitting about 6:45. Thank you all for coming. This webinar has been recorded. It will be emailed out to everyone tomorrow. And if you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, my phone number and my email is in the chat, and also it's here on the screen. And thank you so much and have a great night.